What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. We've been over my running back and wide receiver rankings. Today, we're taking a look at quarterback. As always, know that these rankings are obviously going to change as we make our way through the summer, but this video is a great one to reference back on just because we're going to have a deep dive on each player and you can understand tier breaks a little bit better. So sit back, hit the like button, start things off in tier 1 where we have Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jayden Daniels, and Jalen Hurts. Number 1, I have Lamar. 28.7 years old, start the season, number 1 in points per game last year. ADP is 2, but they're very, very close. On most platforms, it's like, you might have Josh Allen by 1 pick, you might have Lamar by 1 pick, but everywhere they're going 1 and 2. Lamar led all quarterbacks last season by 3 points per game, having by far the best season among quarterbacks. He had 4 more total touchdowns than Josh Allen, 825 more total yards through 2 fewer interceptions. He was also significantly more efficient as a passer. He threw for 441 more passing yards on 9 fewer pass attempts. Now, again, having said that, I think it's completely viable. No matter who you like, whether it's Allen, whether it's Lamar, either one of them can be the number 1 quarterback this season. I think the appeal with Lamar is that he has that higher, like 95th, 98th percentile ceiling than Josh Allen. We've seen him post 25.3 points per game and 27.7 points per game before. Josh Allen has never hit 25 points per game. So if that's what you're looking for, in a season where like everything goes right for one of these players, Lamar does have that like true league winning upside where it's like he could single-handedly be like, you have to have Lamar or else it's really, really difficult to win. Like 27.7 points per game is apparently in his range of outcomes because he's done it before. When he doesn't hit, though, the floor is lower. So since 2019, you look at Lamar Jackson's points per game rank among quarterbacks. He's been the quarterback 1, 9, 9, 6, 3, and 1, whereas Josh Allen has been the quarterback 11, 3, 1, 2, 1, and 2. So again, it really just comes down to what type of player you want. Do you want the higher variance where like Lamar could be a mid to low end quarterback 1 in points per game, but could also be the quarterback 1 by a mile? And if I had to say like which one's more likely, it is more likely we see last season, just given that basically everything is the same for the team this year, except they've added another weapon in the receiving game in Hopkins. But we know it exists. We know that he does have a lower floor. Josh Allen is pretty darn likely to be a top 3 quarterback. So at worst, you're getting pretty solid production from him. He just doesn't have as high of a ceiling. Also worth noting that Josh Allen hasn't missed a game due to injury since 2018. Lamar Jackson has missed 10 games due to injury since 2021. Again, right now my lean is Lamar because I do think he's set up to have a season just like he had last year, especially in the touchdown department. Like things are set up so well for him. And I just like the fact that, he's probably going to run for like twice as many yards as Josh Allen. So again, my lean is Lamar, but it's a true coin flip. If you're worried about the injuries, if you're worried about maybe him not being a top 3 quarterback, both are incredible picks. They should be going as a quarterback 1 and 2. Pick the one that you prefer. After those 2, I think it's Jayden Daniels. I think theoretically, if you wanted to make like a tier 1A and have Allen and Lamar up there and then have, tier 1B, Daniels and Hurts, I think that would be fine. I think we should just call it tier 1 for all of them. But yeah, Jayden Daniels was awesome as a rookie. Technically was 6th in points per game, but it was actually even better than that. He left after 10 snaps in week 7 due to rib injury. And then week 18, he played like limited snaps because they didn't really have to play the starters. So I think it was like halftime he left that game. If you remove week 18, when he only played half the snaps, and you remove week 7 when he left due to injury, he goes up to 23 points per game in the other 15 games. That would have ranked 2nd behind only Lamar Jackson last season. So again, that's as a rookie. That's with only Terry McLaurin to throw to. This offseason, of course, they added Deebo Samuel. That's really nice. Some people think Samuel's cooked, but like at the end of the day, this is an offense that does a lot of screen passes. And so Deebo Samuel made a ton of sense for them to go after, just because if that's a big part of their game plan, why not add someone to the roster? And again, wide receiver, they're pretty thin at last season. It was Terry McLaurin, and it was a huge drop-off in talent after that. Add someone who's amazing in the screen game. Debo's not going to go out there and win on routes. He's not a great, man beater. He's not going to challenge Terry McLaurin deep downfield, but he's great in the screen game. And so if this is an offense that heavily utilizes that is a great addition that can increase the efficiency for Daniels, who was already hyperly efficient. Only reason I have Daniels at 3 is that we've only seen it one time. And that doesn't mean it can't happen again. He can't improve. I do think it'll happen again. I do think he's going to improve. But we've seen Lamar, Josh Allen, they've been quarterback ones for 6 consecutive years. And so I feel extremely confident that Jayden Daniels is going to have another elite season. But I also feel extremely confident that Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen are going to do that. And so if I had the choice just straight up, of course, I would prefer the guys who have done it, for 5, 6, 7 years in a row. I would say, though, it's nice getting the discount. Sometimes Allen and Lamar do go, I don't want to say a full round, but sometimes it gets close to a round and you see Daniels start to fall off a little bit, and getting that sort of discount, because Jayden Daniels could easily be the quarterback one overall this season. I think it's nice having that. But again, straight up, I think you prefer those guys who have done it before, and they have the better supporting cast. So yeah, he has Debo now, but it's really just McLaurin and Debo. Obviously, the weapons in Baltimore are significantly better. Even in Buffalo, the weapons are better. So just the environment is just a little bit better for those other two. Again, I'd be pumped to draft any of those 3. Rounding out Tier 1, we have Jalen Hurts, my quarterback 4, ADP, quarterback 4, 5th in points per game last season. Since becoming the starter in 2021, Jalen Hurts has been the quarterback 7, 1, 2, and 5 in points per game. And he does have one true league-winning season. He scored 25.2 points per game in 2022. So we know he's capable of having, that quarterback one. Again, 25 points per game is league-winning. It can be theoretically league-winning in a bad year. If quarterback has 22 points per game, but everyone else is down at 19 because everyone got hurt, everyone underperformed, everyone got unlucky, sure. Usually, if you hit 25 points per game, no matter what everyone else did at quarterback, that is league winning. So he has that in his range of outcomes. It's also we know, right? We just know with the Eagles, they're going to be good. We know they have the best offensive line in the NFL. We know they have a good defense. I think it makes sense putting him at 4 because of how good that is, right? Because of the fact that they're probably not going to get into a ton of shootouts. They have Saquon plus that O-line, so it's they can run the ball a ton. But at the end of the day, it's he's so safe because we just know. There are just no unknowns for the Eagles this season. They're going to be good. They're going to score a ton of touchdowns. He's going to run for a ton because the tush-push is so loud. But yeah, it's he's safe in this range at quarterback 4, but I would still much prefer the ceiling of Daniels, of Lamar, of Allen, because they don't have that whole thing of the Eagles are winning every single time in the second half. You think about Jayden Daniels, it's he hit that ceiling a lot of times where he had 30, 35 points in games because they were losing, right? They were down. I think it was the Eagles game where the Eagles got up by a ton of points. I think I'm remembering this right. Eagles got up by a ton of points. And then you're oh, well, it's not going to be a good game for Daniels. And then all of a sudden it's just touchdown after touchdown after touchdown in the second half. Hurts never gets to do that because they're always winning in the first half. He only attempted 144 pass attempts in the second half of games last season. That was 48 fewer than the second lowest among quarterbacks to play at least 14 games. That is wild. Jalen Hurts, 48 fewer second half pass attempts than the second fewest in the NFL. So it becomes a situation where, again, super safe, but ceiling for Jalen Hurts, I know he's done it before. This season, maybe it's a little bit unlikely just given how good the Eagles are. I do think he gets maybe a bad rap for injuries too. Some people are yeah, that plus the injuries. He's only missed 5 games due to injury in his 5 season NFL career. He's played at least 15 games in every season. I really wouldn't worry about injuries for Hurts. It's something that I feel people mention a lot, but I really just wouldn't worry about that at all. So again, tier 1 is extremely locked in. It is very likely that every single one of these 4 quarterbacks is going to finish top 6, 7 at worst in points per game. Incredibly likely that all 4 of them are going to crush it. I don't think any other quarterback should be in this tier. I do think it's a great range to target in drafts. My general philosophy this season is going to be either you're attacking this range At cost, there's so many good quarterbacks that I don't want to reach on anyone. Like if, you see an ADP of like 30th, I'm making something up, a 30th overall for Josh Allen, I don't want to be taking like 24th. Like I don't want to be reaching half a round on any of these guys because there's so many great quarterbacks. But at cost, if you can get them around their ADP, my philosophy this year is either you attack this range, these top four, maybe Joe Burrow if he falls, and we'll get to him in this next tier in a second. But if I don't get one of those five, I'd just wait. I'd maybe target one or two of the later round quarterbacks because some of those guys also have elite upside, but they're going much later in drafts. And so, you kind of benefit from like maybe they don't finish top four, but if they finish 6th or 7th in points per game and you pair them with a round 3 or 4 player, maybe you get a little bit more value in that aspect. But yeah, this is not a season where I want to be reaching for quarterbacks. So don't reach for any of these 4, again, maybe 5 after. And if you don't end up with a top 4, top 5, you're probably waiting to later rounds. But again, we'll talk about the players I'd be targeting. But yeah, there's a lot of great quarterbacks this season. Tier 2, only one player. It's only Joe Burrow. My quarterback 5, ADP quarterback 5. I don't think you will find anyone on the planet who thinks that he should not be exactly the quarterback 5 this season. The case for him is fairly simple. He's capable of throwing for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns, especially if his wide receivers can stay healthy. The drawback, of course, is rushing. He's not like a complete zero on the ground, right? He's not Tua, he's not Stafford, but he's not Lamar either. He's not going to run for 800 yards. Like, there's a world where, honestly, Lamar, like, I don't want to say 1,000 more yards than Burrow, but like Burrow's not going to run for many. He's going to run for like a couple hundred, maybe. There's a world where it's like, Lamar could push for 1,000. It's probably closer to like 800-900, but like that sort of upside where it's like he could run for that many more yards, or Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts could score 15 more rushing touchdowns. It's like, sure, Burrow will throw for more touchdowns probably, but the rushing touchdowns score more points, and the passing or the rushing yards score more points in passing. So it's like the upside of these 4 ahead of him is just too significant to where he needs everything to go right. Like, unless everything goes right, it is so difficult for Joe Burrow to compete with the top 4. He needs the defense to be trash again. He needs Chase and Higgins both to stay healthy. He still needs to get lucky with touchdown variants. Again, the mobile quarterbacks just have a little bit more wiggle room, right? They can see their touchdown rate fall a little bit more than expected and make up for that on the ground or with rushing touchdowns. You can't say that for Joe Burrow. He can't afford to have a little bit of an unlucky season or even an unlucky stretch of time. He can't even afford to have like an unlucky 4 or 5 games in a row if he wants to compete with the top end. So I think he should get his own little mini tier because he's like objectively a better pick than all the other quarterbacks. And I do think he deserves to be put into that like narrative of like the early quarterback or late. I think he still deserves to be in that top 5 of I'm okay spending an early pick on him. But if he's only going to rush for 10 to 12 yards per game, maybe 1 to 3 touchdowns on the season, there's just no way you can put him into that top tier. He also has a little bit more risk of the offensive line. Baltimore, I have ranked 7th. Buffalo, I have ranked 4th. Commanders, I have ranked 11th. Eagles, I have ranked 1st. I see my offensive line rankings website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. Bengals, I have ranked 31st. So there's another risk kind of added in there that these top-end quarterbacks have the rushing, still can throw for a lot, have good offensive lines. They're all set up to succeed. And it's like Burrow probably is going to succeed, but has a few risk factors that just lower that floor a little bit too much to where, again, 5th in his own tier. In tier 3, I think there's a big difference on a site like Underdog and a site, I guess all sites, in redraft leagues, ESPN, Yahoo, NFL, all those redraft leagues where you're actually starting a specific player each week and it's not best ball. Not in terms of positional rankings, I think it's exactly the same for both, but more in terms of like my willingness to attack this range. So on Underdog, if I draft Rashee Rice, I draft Xavier Worthy, Marvin Harrison Jr., McBride, I draft Sutton or Ingram, any 2 of like Bucky, Evans, Godwin, and Ibuka. You better believe I'm going after Mahomes, Kyler, Bo Nix, Baker, right? I'm going after this range if I have drafted 1 or especially 2 of their pass catchers or like a running back that can catch passes as well in the earlier rounds. Of course, I'm going to do that. You want to be correlating your picks in best ball. You need, fewer things to go right. If you pick like 4 or 5 players on a team, that team hits, you've gotten a good chunk of your roster correct, betting on one thing to happen. In a redraft league, the only combos so far that I've suggested stacking are Caleb Williams and Justin Fields. Maybe some reasons we'll get into when we talk about those players. For the most part, you don't want to really be stacking. You're assuming a little bit too much risk in doing so. So in a redraft league, I rarely draft from this range just because I think all the ADPs are fair. I don't think they're like going too early, but it's not super common you get like an amazing discount, and the opportunity cost at skill player is still there. So when you look at the like running backs, wide receivers, tight ends that are still going in this general range of quarterback, they're still pretty good. They're good bets. They have high ceilings, high floors. They're players we really want on our teams. So because of that, and because I don't think the difference between this tier and the next tier we'll get into is that different, but I do think there's a big drop off at running back, wide receiver, not as much tight end, honestly, but running back and wide receiver especially, that I think they're good picks, right? And I draft them a good amount on Underdog, but I doubt in like my 3 main redraft leagues, I doubt I'll take any of the quarterbacks in this range. Again, not because they're bad picks, not because they lack upside, but because the value doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, just given how strong the quarterback like 10 to 20 range is, and maybe even 21 to 25, probably not 21 to 25, but the 10 to 20 range is very, very good this season. So I would rather just wait a little bit longer, secure a few more running backs, wide receivers, and then target that next range of quarterbacks. But of course, we'll go over this range because many of you draft an Underdog, but then also maybe they do fall. Like maybe one of these guys available like a round and a half past ADP, and you're like, I wasn't anticipating drafting this player, but you want to be prepared in case they do become a value. So in tier 3, first up, Patrick Mahomes. I definitely think he should be the top quarterback in this tier, but since the departure of Tyreek Hill, Mahomes has been the quarterback 3, 14, and 11 in points per game. We can blame injuries at wide receiver last season, but realistically, Mahomes was still 14th in points per game when Rashee Rice was healthy. We could also blame how good their defense was, being like, oh, maybe Mahomes didn't need to throw it that much because defense was so good. Mahomes was still 3rd in pass attempts in the entire NFL last season, so it's not like they never threw the ball. Only 2 quarterbacks threw the ball more than Patrick Mahomes. They were still a very pass-heavy team, even with how good their defense was. A lot just came down to them not hitting on the deep ball, right? When they had Tyreek Hill in his prime, he just chucked it downfield at any point, and Tyreek Hill came down with it, right? That's been an issue. Ever since Tyreek Hill has left, they have not been as good at the deep ball. Among 42 qualified quarterbacks last season, Mahomes ranked 40th in deep throw percentage. They were not attempting passes downfield. He was 40th in ADOT, 38th in completion rate over expectation. He wasn't that great last season, and it's fair to wonder if, not having Tyreek Hill and now also having Kelsey very much at the tail end of his career is starting to have some sort of impact on Patrick Mahomes. I do think that Rashee Rice is basically going to be their new Kelsey, but he's going to miss a chunk of the season with suspension. Given what we saw from Worthy, I know some people are kind of hyped about him, but like he wasn't that great besides the final play of the Super Bowl, like when they were playing against all of the backup players against the Eagles. Like he didn't have a single good game besides that one, and it wasn't a good game until the final play. He averaged 37.5 receiving yards per game last season. I know he turned it up a little bit down the stretch, but again, they had no one else. He should have turned it up a lot sooner. They had no other weapons. They needed him to go off much earlier than he did, and he never truly went off again until the final play against backups. So it's a little bit scary. I still think Mahomes is an elite quarterback, but in terms of fantasy football, in terms of redraft leagues, definitely can't put him in the same tier as Joe Burrow. I think he probably deserves to lead this tier, but I would be shocked if I left a redraft league with Patrick Mahomes. Like, we're going to go over so many quarterbacks that have great upside, great floors, and go so much later in the draft that I'd like to actually spend this early to pick. I know I have to rank someone 6, right? But I'm not going to take the quarterback 6. I think that's like the biggest takeaway here is someone has to be the quarterback 6 in the rankings, and I think it should be Mahomes, but I wouldn't draft whoever I put at the quarterback 6. At 7, we have Kyler Murray, ADP is 9th, so a little bit of an ADP discount at times, and that's an average of 9th. I have seen him go 10th. I've seen him go 11th. So I have seen a lot of times he will fall in drafts because, people don't like him, right? People have been burned by Kyler Murray. And so you get into the lobbies sometimes where it's like, if everyone else just refuses to draft him, he becomes a huge discount in that draft. He is the one that I'd be most likely to take because not only like in this range, not only does he go last, but again, a lot of times people refuse to draft him. You can get him later than his ADP. If you adjust Justin Fields' stats, which we'll get to in a second, last season was the first time that Kyler Murray was not a top 12 quarterback in points per game. He's finished 12th, 6th, 4th, 7th, 10th, and 13th last season in points per game throughout his career. The big issue is the missed games, right? He's missed 18 games due to injury over the last 4 years. Personally, I don't care that much. Like, I don't really think about injuries for quarterbacks all that often unless you're spending, an early pick. If you want to bring injuries into play, drafting Lamar Jackson, okay, you probably have to take him in round 3. At that point, yes, any missed time at quarterback in round 3 is massively significant because that was one of your best opportunities for league winner at running back or wide receiver. You forgoed that, and so you can't be streaming quarterback very often if you gave that up. When we start to get later, into tier 3 into tier 4, who really cares? Like, the actual difference here isn't that significant. And so if you were to promise me like, yep, Kyler's going to miss like 3-4 games, I'd be like, okay, like I take a hit in like 1 point per game in those couple of weeks. So be it. Maybe 2 points per game if he's having a good year. It's not the end of the world. I can find streaming production given how deep quarterback is this season. So I wouldn't worry about that much. Again, you're not taking the actual 0. You can still stream a quarterback in the weeks that he misses. Yeah, when he's healthy, I think he's going to outperform his ADP. I like the fact with the Cardinals, and this is why I've been in on a lot of Cardinals players this season, is that they play the most dome games in the NFL, and then even in the very few outdoor games that they do have, many of those don't have weather concerns as well. There are a lot of quarterbacks that have 1 or 2 dome games this season, and then they play a ton of late season games in the Northeast. And I know this time of year you're drafting in the summer, you're not worried about weather, but there are a lot of teams. Chicago's a big one that comes to mind. We'll get to that one in the next tier. There's a lot of teams where you're you look at their schedule and you're you keep playing in Chicago, in Philly, in Green Bay, in these November and December games. There's going to be weather concerns in those spots, let alone just wind, but cold, maybe snow. Those are not environments that we want for our quarterback. The Cardinals don't play outdoors until week 10. And it's really the only game you're concerned about. It's at Seattle in November, but it's probably just going to be a little bit drizzly. After that, we get 2 more dome games. Then he plays at Tampa Bay. That's not a concern. Another 3 dome games. Then championship weekend, he plays at the Bengals, but that's probably going to be a shootout. And it's probably going to be a super important game for both teams. So you look at the schedule and it has a lot to do with how much I like the Cardinals, because every single week when we look at these things and being man, they play an easy schedule for defenses. They play indoors a lot. Every week you're going to look at it and be well, they're not playing in bad weather. I don't know. You add that to Kyler's mobility. I know people talk about his effort levels, but he's fully capable of running for 800 yards, double-digit touchdowns. Now, will he? I don't know. But when you have someone going this late that's capable of 800 yards and double-digit touchdowns, that adds a lot of upside when they're also getting good weather games. I don't know. I think if he does that in a season, he has that mobility in a season where Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride are able to stay healthy and they progress as players, I think he's one of the people who could challenge the top 4. And if he got even close to the production of those top 4 quarterbacks and you got him at this much of an ADP discount, you would have a stronger team than people who took those top 4 in round 3 or 4. At 8, we have Bo Nix, deceptively mobile for Bo Nix. He's obviously not Lamar Jackson, but really no one is. He had over 400 yards, 4 touchdowns on the ground last season, though. That is more than enough to elevate his floor and really help you in weeks where he doesn't get lucky with touchdowns, but then also elevate the ceiling. In the weeks where he does have 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, if he's adding on the ground, maybe he adds a 4th touchdown rushing, he can get to 30, 35 points in a game, and that's what we want in fantasy. Jayden Daniels gets all of the hype just given, and deservingly, how good his rookie season went, but Bo Nix also exceeded all expectations last year. He is in a phenomenal spot again this year. The offensive line is top 3. They have the best defense in the league. They've got a great ground game so that teams kind of have to focus on that because they're like, well, if we sell out to stop the aerial attack, they're going to crush us on the ground. They added Evan Ingram. They added Pat Bryant, two really nice playmakers, I think, that can really excel in like the short and intermediate areas of the field. That's what they wanted, right? They already have Marvin Mims kind of locking in that deep role. They already have Sutton, has a great alpha. And so you add these two, you add in the running backs. Denver is a really exciting team this year. They are a legitimate contender to win the AFC West. My only hesitation with Bo Nix is play volume for fantasy. With such an elite defense, the great offensive line, the great ground game, I think it's possible we run into a lot of games where, they're cooking in the first half, but then teams can't catch up, teams can't get going, and they can just lean on the running backs in the second half. And so we don't necessarily get the play volume we're expecting or need to hit that ceiling for Bo Nix. But he does feel like a very safe pick. I don't know how much of a need there is to draft a safe quarterback in this range when there are other quarterbacks going 4 or 5, sometimes 6 rounds later that could post similar production. So that's the hesitation, is like, if the defense is so good, if the ground game is so good, can he really separate from our quarterback like 10 to 20 range? I don't know. That's up for you to decide when you're drafting. But again, personally, another reason why I like this range. They're all probably going to be good. Can they separate from the next tier? Final tier 3 quarterback is Baker Mayfield. Awesome last season. 4th in points per game. Going 7th by ADP. I have him 9th. Again, unreal last year. He threw for by far the most yards, touchdowns of his career, by far the best completion rate, yards per pass attempt of his career. It was the best season by a mile. He was an efficient, high volume quarterback, and that is what we love to see. And he did it without Godwin for half the year, without Mike Evans for about a month, and with Egbuka still in college, and a great prospect they drafted this season. So if he can play like he did last year, and this offense can be as productive as they were last year, and he gets all of those 3 healthy for the full year, even with the worst injuries, still a top 5 offensive line, and then Wirfs will be back, a month into the season. Oh yeah, there's upside here for Baker Mayfield. He could challenge the top 4 and crush it again this season. 2 hesitations with Baker. First is the touchdown rate. He had a 7.2% touchdown rate last season. That's unsustainable. Even the best quarterbacks in NFL history, the best touchdown passers, quarterbacks where you're no one's going to run it, they're going to throw the ball, a million times, a million touchdowns. He had a 7.2% touchdown rate. No one hits that again. That is just not a sustainable rate. So he was very lucky in the passing touchdown department last season. Also, Liam Cohen, him leaving, taking the job in Jacksonville. I think Liam Cohen is a true difference maker at offensive coordinator. I think it's possible that Baker just sees a combination of natural regression, just being a little bit less lucky with passing touchdowns, mixed with a little bit worse play calling, and thus falls off a little bit more than people are expecting. I'm not worried he's going to be a bad quarterback. It's another one where it's like Bo Nix, where it's he's going to be good. He's going to be good in fantasy. He's probably going to finish in this general range. I think Egbuka's a stud. I think Evans probably has one more year left of really solid production. I think Godwin maybe starts off slow, but by the second half of the season is going to get going when it matters most in fantasy. And having those 3 is an unbelievable trio. But the problem I see in my mind is you're still paying a premium. So you still have quarterbacks going many rounds later that also were set up very well. And so you're paying a premium for someone who I would say is still unlikely to kind of challenge that top 4. I know it can happen, but the touchdown rate was just so high last season. It's very likely that comes down. And so you're, again, paying a premium for an elevated floor when you don't really want to be doing that at quarterback. You want to pay the premium for those top 4 or 5 because they can be league winners. You don't want to pay premium for floor. You don't want to spend up on, a mid-round quarterback that has a high floor and probably can't be a top 2, top 3 quarterback. Again, if you really like him, I think it's fine. Sometimes he'll fall and be good value, but it's just not a range. Tier 3 is just not my favorite range quarterback. Tier 1 or 2, or wait until tier 4. So who's in tier 4? Who is in this tier that I really, really like targeting incredible options at cost? We don't want to be reaching still, please. That is the biggest thing. It's why I honestly removed the must draft players, the target option from the rankings, because so many people would look at it and be like, oh, that's a player Nick really likes. I'll reach on him. No, I really like these players because of their ADP, because what it actually costs to get them in drafts. I might really like Caleb Williams. He's not like my favorite from this group, but let's just say I love Caleb Williams. He's the first quarterback in this tier, going as the quarterback 11. And I've kind of talked, I don't want to say negatively about like Bo Nix and Baker, because it's still, again, I'm very positive about them. I think they're going to have great seasons. But if you hear those two things and you see in the rankings must draft target, you don't see it for those two, some people would go in there and they would like draft Caleb Williams ahead of Bo Nix, ahead of Baker Mayfield. That is not at all what I'm saying. This is a new tier. So I would still 100% of the time draft the tier 3 quarterbacks ahead of the tier 4 quarterbacks. The only reason I like this range more is because they go a lot later in drafts. But if you reach on them and you take them earlier, I wouldn't like the range as much because they're not as good of value in drafts. So I hope that makes sense. It's given ADP cost. This is the range that I like the most. But if you take them earlier in ADP, then I don't like them the most. So first up, we have Caleb Williams going around. We'll have him ranked maybe a little bit later. Points per game production last season was brutal, but so was the offensive system that they were running. The jump from Shane Waldron into Ben Johnson is basically as wide as it can get. And we shouldn't forget how like high end of a prospect Caleb Williams was last season. He was the number one overall pick. He was, someone that people are saying is like the next Patrick Mahomes at times. Like he was a very high-end prospect, and sometimes we jump ship a little bit too early when these young prospects don't produce right out of the gates. The Bears also have an incredible supporting cast of players. So, at this point, when you upgrade the coaching and you finally get good play calling, when you have such a good supporting cast, when you upgrade the offensive line, at this point, if Caleb Williams looks bad again this year, now we're going to start to have more question marks being like, okay, what's the reasoning now? It's not the coaching. It's not the playmakers around you. It's not your offensive line. Is it you not really producing? I don't think that's going to happen. I really do think, because he has some ability as well, that he's going to be mobile. He's going to make some great plays with his arms that he is going to finally hit this season. And he would be the first player I would draft in this range. But again, if it doesn't happen, it'll be on him this year. A little bit unfortunate. I alluded to this before, that he has to play in Chicago. That is not ideal, especially late in the season. The weather in Chicago when they're in the Northeast is not good come November and December. And to close the season, he plays in Chicago, in Philly, in Green Bay, in Chicago. And then finally he gets to go to San Fran championship weekend. That's going to be nice weather. But the 5 games leading up to that all could easily have major weather concerns. Again, not the end of the world. And some of those will probably be totally fine. But some of them will probably not be fine, and that is not ideal in the weeks that matter most. You're going to be sitting there, first week of the playoffs, second week of the playoffs, just crossing your fingers that he's not, seeing Chicago weather in December where it's windy and cold and maybe a little bit snowy. That would be a huge negative to the passing environment, something that a lot of other quarterbacks won't have to deal with this season. But overall, I think Caleb pretty clearly has an elite ceiling. It's tough to put him into the range above after finishing second in dropbacks among all quarterbacks last season and 22nd in fantasy points per game. Wasn't through a lack of volume. It was through unbelievable inefficiency as a quarterback and inaccuracy. He was not an accurate quarterback in terms of fantasy points per dropback, a highly predictive stat. He was 31st out of 40 quarterbacks with at least 200 pass attempts. Some of it was on him. 100% some of it was on him. We will see how much of it was on him as the season unfolds. I think putting him in a tier 4 is correct. After Caleb, we have Brock Purdy, my quarterback 11 right now. He was points per game, ranked 11 last season. In his 3 seasons in the NFL, he's been the quarterback 13, 8, and 11. He's a quarterback that is super unlikely to post a top 5 season, but is also unlikely to really disappoint. They lost Debo. Ayuk is going to come back slowly. He'll probably kind of have to ramp up in kind of the second half of the season. You never really know with McCaffrey how long he's going to stay healthy. Pearsall's starting camp a little bit late. I'm not too worried about that, but it's not amazing starting camp late. Juwan Jennings wants a new contract or to be traded. So it's fair to look around to the supporting cast and be like, oh, what is it? Just going to be like George Kittle out there to start camp? Like, obviously, again, they have McCaffrey for now. Juwan, I think he's going to go out there in camp, but he said he's going to go out there unhappy. So we'll see what that kind of means. There's a lot of unknowns here. It's still San Fran, though. And it's still, a great coaching staff. They still have good playmakers. He's still a good quarterback to where, like, again, I don't think there's a world where Brock Purdy is like 20th points per game. I just don't even think that's possible. But you look around and you start to wonder, like, could things fall off for the offense this season? But then we look at the reverse and you can say, okay, but also the touchdown rate did fall off last year. He was a little bit unlucky in touchdown rate last year. It is still a great offensive system. I don't really care who the playmakers are. This is San Fran. This is the Shanahan team. They are going to be efficient. So really, he's just the ultimate, like, high floor, low ceiling quarterback, someone that I don't tend to draft a lot. If I drafted like Kittle or one of the wide receivers, McCaffrey on Underdog, I would pair him with Purdy in a redraft league. I don't think any sort of stacking there is something you have to do. But he's someone that, like, if you have drafted or plan on drafting a risky quarterback, like maybe you really, really like Justin Fields, but you're like, I don't really want to only have Justin Fields on my team. Purdy's a great quarterback to pair with. Maybe you love, I don't know, Bryce Young and Michael Penix Jr., but you're like, okay, but I can't just start with them. He's a great quarterback to say, I know he's going to be around that, like, low end 1, high end 2 on a weekly basis. I would say it's more likely he's like a low end quarterback 1. You know that's going to happen, and you take a shot on your next one. Great quarterback to do that with. Quarterback 12 is going to be Dak Prescott, quarterback 14 by ADP. Since 2018, he's been the quarterback 13, 3, 1, 8, 14, and 5 in points per game, and then 24 last season. Huge drop-off last season. That stat is a little bit misleading. It counts with the week 9 game he left due to injury. It counts the week 6 game where he left early after the Cowboys were just embarrassed by the Lions game I was at. It was highly embarrassing. In the 6 other games, he was quarterback 15. That's much more in line with his, career production, but a little bit still more on the low end. This season, like, I don't think the hamstring injury is going to be too much of a concern. They're going to, like, limit him in camp, limit him in the preseason. I don't know if he'll even play in the preseason. But I think it would be a bigger concern if he was mobile, right? If he was someone who runs for like 30, 40 yards per game, if you're going to cut that in half, that's not great. But even if you cut his production in half, like he just doesn't run it enough to where the hamstring would really be any sort of concern. Gets a big upgrade at wide receiver, team acquiring George Pickens this offseason. I've said it many times in these videos. I think the upgrade that George Pickens has, like what he does for this team, makes it the perfect signing. Like, teams cannot sell out to stop CeeDee Lamb. They can't double team him as much. They can't have safety help as much because George Pickens is someone that can just roast you deep downfield, can win on his own. It's an unbelievable landing spot for him, for the team, just everyone involved. Great addition. My hesitation with Dallas is Brian Schottenheimer. Like, I don't know that he is an amazing play caller. In his 12 years as a play caller, he's only had 4 offenses finish top 10 in points per game. Only 3 offenses finish top 16 in yardage. Like, we are fully expecting, by drafting Dallas players at their current cost, we're fully expecting Dallas to finish in the top half in yardage this season. So the fact that that might be heavily in question is a little bit concerning. Maybe we get positive reports out of camp. Maybe they can alleviate some of those concerns. But my ideal way of attacking Dallas is through drafting CeeDee Lamb, drafting George Pickens, maybe Ferguson a little bit later on. I'd be okay with Dak at cost because, again, I have him ranked a little bit ahead of his ADP, and that's average ADP. He might drop to the quarterback 15 or 16. And if Dak becomes a really good value, I have no problem drafting him, but I would probably take 2. And realistically, I would say that, like, for all the tier 4 quarterbacks and beyond, take 2, right? Like, I don't know that I would trust just leaving a draft with Dak Prescott, but if I left a draft with Dak Prescott and Justin Fields and Drake Maye, and Justin Herbert and Trevor Lawrence, if I left with one of them along with Dak, certainly, right? You take a shot, you say, okay, which one of you is going to hit? If you give us 2 chances at this general range of quarterback, it is pretty likely we're going to hit on one of them. Then you can just drop the other, play them the rest of the season, or maybe you hit on both. You can stream these quarterbacks. I think it's a great range to double dip, but I would not feel amazing about only drafting Dak. And the data is also very clear on that. I know people don't like doing it. The data over years and years and years of sample sizes is clear that if you wait until the later rounds or double-digit rounds to draft a quarterback, you should be taking 2. Teams that draft 2 quarterbacks in double-digit rounds perform better over time than teams that draft one quarterback in double-digit rounds, assuming they did not take one early. At 13, we have Justin Fields. I have him ranked right where his ADP is. Technically, quarterback 8 points per game last season. Again, another great quarterback to pair with a safer option because he's got the upside to legitimately finish top 4 in points per game this season. He's had a difficult time staying healthy, but again, I don't care that much in this range. If you told me he's going to miss 4 games due to injury, I'd be like, okay, I can stream that. It's really just not a concern. I'd love for that to not happen in the first 4 games of the season or the last 4 games. But if it just happens at some point during the year, really, who cares? You don't have to start him, put him on the bench, put him on your IR spot, and you can start another quarterback. So I don't care at all that he's had a tough time staying healthy. Obviously, he's got a very wide range of outcomes this season, right? Like the Jets could lean super run heavy and play slow, just limiting plays and making it so that, like, even though he has a lot of rushing upside, he just has so few pass attempts that he's just super frustrating and you can't be trusting him. But the opposite could happen. Like they could just let him cook. They could design run plays for him. He could run the ball 9-10 times per game. And at that point, he'd barely need to do anything as a passer. Because both exist, I think it makes a lot of sense to like gain some exposure to him. And so if you were in 3 redraft leagues, I probably would draft him in one of those. I don't know that I'd go like all in and draft him in like 2 or 3, but I would draft him in one of the 3. If you're only in one, it really just comes down to value, kind of who you want. Does he fall in the draft? But if that second outcome happens where they let him cook, they play a little bit faster than expected, they let him drop back a little bit more than we're expecting, he could pretty easily finish as a top 5 quarterback. I know that sounds crazy, but like even with the Steelers, you think back to what they were doing last season, they were limiting him, right? Like very, very much so, not having him push the ball super much downfield, not designing a crazy amount of run plays for him. Like it was very limited, very structured, very slow. He, even in his 6 games as starter in that system, was the quarterback 6 overall at 19.1 points per game. So if the Jets are just like, unleash him. We don't care. Like, we know we're not going to win the Super Bowl this season. Let's see what Justin Fields can do. The playmakers aren't that great, so I don't think it's going to be amazing as a passer. But in terms of fantasy, if they're letting him drop back a ton and designing run plays for him, who knows? Like, and when you look at the weapons there, right, compared to the Steelers, would you rather have George Pickens or Garrett Wilson? Garrett Wilson, right? Would you rather have Najee Warren or Breece Hall? Breece Hall. So it's like, yes, they have a lack of total playmakers, but the 2 that they have, Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, are better than what Pittsburgh had. And Pittsburgh didn't have a ton of backups. So it's like, or good backups. So the fact that he was able to do it over there, we've seen it at times in Chicago, it gives you some hope. Again, I don't think that it's a lock he's going to be a top 5 quarterback. I have him ranked this low for a reason. But he averaged 9.2 rush attempts per game as a starter last year that led to 9 fantasy points per game. It was 8.9 fantasy points per game on rushing alone. If he can do that on the Jets and he gets 9 rushing fantasy points per game, then to pay off his ADP, he's going to need like 9 passing points per game. That's 125 passing yards and a passing touchdown per week. Doesn't have to do that much through the air to pay off his ADP. So again, I would draft Justin Fields on every team that has Garrett Wilson because there's no way Garrett Wilson works out for how early he's going unless Justin Fields also works out. So if you draft Garrett Wilson, you have to draft Justin Fields. But yeah, I would mix him in a decent amount because he's definitely got upside this season. And I would pair him with a safe option. I pair him with a Purdy. I pair him with some of the quarterbacks we'll talk about in a second. Drake Maye. I would pair him with Drake Maye this season, who I would say is my favorite quarterback to draft right now. ADP is ridiculous at 18. I'm using ESPN ADPs right now. I don't know. I show different ADPs on the board, sometimes composite, sometimes Underdog, sometimes Fantasy Pros. You kind of have to just go with whatever site you're going to be on. But I have seen Drake Maye on some of these sites go way later than he should. He was 16th in points per game as a starter last year. Obviously, he was lower than 16th if you include the games where he came in to play 4 plays, or the game where late in the year, they benched the starters at times. Like if you include the games where he didn't play, of course he's going to be later than that. But if you only include the games that he start and you remove the concussion game, he was 16th points per game. So you look at that production, you're like, okay, last season, the coaching was horrific. It was unbelievably bad coaching, unbelievably bad play calling. That's going to be so much better this season. The coaching is going to be much, much, much improved, much better play calling. The offensive line was a nightmare last season. He was a rookie. His top 10 target earners last year were Hunter Henry and Pop Douglas, who will be there this year. They were top 2. Kayshon Boutte, Austin Hooper, Ramondre Stevenson, Kendrick Bourne, Jalen Polk, who is like the worst wide receiver in the NFL, Antonio Gibson, KJ Osborne, and JaMychal Hasty. That's what he was throwing to last season. Like, it was quite possibly the worst possible situation he could have been thrown into. And he looked pretty good given those circumstances. This season, they drafted an offensive lineman 4th overall. They drafted another one in round 3. They drafted Travion Henderson, who not only is an explosive playmaker on the ground, but also in the screen game, but is also great in pass protection. So that's going to help. So the offensive line should be better. We should have better pass blocking running back. They drafted Kyle Williams, who's going to be a great deep threat. They didn't have any sort of deep threat last season. They signed Stephon Diggs, who obviously at the tail end of his career, but is roughly 100 times better than Jalen Polk. Like, when I say Jalen Polk was the worst wide receiver in the NFL last season, I'm not being hyperbolic. Like, he was unbelievably bad. He was such a bad wide receiver. He should not be touching the field. Shouldn't be sniffing the field. He should be in the locker room, not even getting to watch the game in actuality. Like, he should be watching the game on TV. He was so bad. Stephon Diggs, opening camp, like, just good to go, which is crazy. Like, I thought for sure he'd be like on the pop. I thought he'd for sure be brought along slowly. If he's just opening camp totally fine, we should expect pretty good production from him this season. And so when you improve the coaching and the offensive line and the skill players, you give him year 2, and he was already 16th in points per game last season. Again, in those starts where he was actually playing the game. Like, I mean, I would say if you just said, hey, like someone came up to you before your draft and you're like, I'm going to give you a gift. You can lock in one quarterback at cost. So you're getting them at ADP. They're not going to be some crazy value, but you get to lock them in at cost. My answer to that would be Drake Maye. I think it is a virtual lock that he returns value at ADP. And I think he has the upside when you add in the mobility he showed last season, when you had in all of these upgrades to the team. I think he has the upside to be like a top 6, top 7 quarterback. And for where you have to take him, that's unbelievable value. And because you're also adding another quarterback, it allows you, because again, if you wait this long, you might as well take 2. Take another shot and take a shot on someone who's risky, someone that you think has ceiling, because I think Drake Maye is locked in. I think the floor is absolutely there. So take a shot on Justin Fields, take a shot on someone who has ceiling along with him. But he's an unbelievable pick. You'd want to be heavily exposed to him also on Underdog. Next up, we have Justin Herbert. I have him ranked a little bit behind ADP, but it's really just because I can't rank every quarterback as the quarterback 12. Like, there's just so many quarterbacks that deserve to be the quarterback 12. You can't rank them all as that. You have to actually make a decision and place people in different spots. He was somewhat disappointing last year, but you can entirely explain all of that away through the foot injuries. Not only did he play through plantar fascia for the entire season, like the whole season he had that wasn't going to go away. He also suffered a high ankle sprain in week 2, which he played through as well. I mean, you remember every single week last year, it was like, is Herbert going to play? Is he not going to play? And we're like, he probably shouldn't play. He's definitely banged up. And then he'd go out there and perform pretty well. Crazy that he managed to have a 0.6% interception rate last season, led the Chargers to an 11-6 record, despite the ground game being a lot worse than expected. And that hurts, right? Like, they were probably thinking, okay, we built this offense to have a decent ground game, good offensive line. Like, yes, Herbert can't run anymore. Yes, he's going to be a little bit, more of a statue in the pocket, but at least we have the ground game to lean on, right? They didn't. Like, it opened the season fine, but it was horrible down the stretch. Justin Herbert's an elite quarterback, and that is a fact. Like, that is not something you can deny. He is an elite quarterback, and the mobility should be back this season. You have the addition of Trey Harris at wide receiver. You've got Rondé Gadsden as like a field-stretching tight end. Not necessarily someone who were like attacking, and maybe last round Underdog, but like the addition of him gives them someone who can like run the seam, be efficient downfield as a tight end on like a limited basis. Of course, Hampton, Najee going to stabilize that running back room. And if Najee can't go, Hampton can do it by himself. I think the Chargers are going to be really tough to beat this season. I know I already said that Denver is going to be a threat to win the NFC West. But I don't know, given how good the Chargers look, like someone in the NFC West is set up to have a crazy good season and to like miss the playoffs. Or maybe all 3 of them are going to make the playoffs. That division is unreal besides the Raiders, who honestly, and the Raiders are probably going to be better than expected, but it's like they just have no shot because of who they're playing with. But yeah, Add Herbert to the list of quarterbacks that, yes, is undervalued, and you look at it and you're like, you said he's undervalued, but you have him behind ADP, because I can't rank like 10 quarterbacks as a quarterback 12. There are a lot of really good picks. Next up, we have JJ McCarthy, right? He's a great pick too. Like, I want to rank him as the quarterback 12, but he can't be because I have other players ranked as the quarterback 12. So again, when I talk about not wanting to reach on quarterback too early, not wanting to attack the mid-range, someone from this range, someone from like Purdy, Justin Fields, Dak Prescott, Caleb Williams, McCarthy, Maye, Herbert, one of these guys is going to end up falling in your draft, being at a crazy good value. Maybe two of them will do it. Why not wait for that quarterback? Why not take two from this range? Because this is also another very, very good pick. Another one of my favorite picks. I would say, honestly, if you said, Nick, you get a second pick at cost, it's probably JJ McCarthy. It is as simple as any competent quarterback will be productive in Kevin O'Connell's system. When you are throwing in that system to Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, you get Aaron Jones out of the backfield, like you get an unbelievable defense, which is going to take the ball right after you score and give you a right back to you. Like it's going to give you short fields, good scoring chances. I mean, anyone, literally any competent quarterback would be good in fantasy. And not only do I think McCarthy is competent, he's more mobile than people think. He's going to add with his legs more than Kirk Cousins did in the past, more than Sam Darnold did last season. I mean, I think he can easily outperform what Sam Darnold did, and Sam Darnold was the quarterback 9 in points per game. So again, Drake Maye is probably the quarterback I want the most. If you walked up to me before the draft and said lock in a quarterback at value, it's Drake Maye. But if I can't get him, or you gave me 2 when you said that, my second would be JJ McCarthy. Again, tier 4 is by far the best range to attack quarterback this season. And on Underdog, I love taking 2 from this range, and especially if you miss on the top 5. But even in a redraft league, again, as long as you don't have like 4 bench spots, this is a great range to take 2 quarterbacks from. You're going to be set at quarterback if you do that. To begin tier 5, we have Jared Goff as a quarterback 17. Goff is a very popular quarterback to be fading this season, but the reasonings aren't like that strong, if we're being honest. I get not wanting to draft him as like the quarterback 7 that he finished last season. Obviously, that would be absurd, but people are acting like that is his ADP. They're like, oh, you can't draft him. He's going to have crazy regression. It's like, well, yeah, you can't draft him as the quarterback 7 because they're not going to score 33 points per game. He's not going to be as good as he was last year. But I feel like, everyone watching these videos, watching people say he's going to see regression, just has a natural like negative outlook on him because that's all you've heard from Detroit. All you've heard from Goff this season is he's going to have regression. He's going to be worse. You can't be drafting him. And that pushes down his ADP. Sure, they're not going to average 33 points per game with Ben Johnson gone, but the Lions are probably still going to be a top 5 offense. They didn't lose any of their offensive playmakers. Even with the loss of Ragnow, they're going to have a top 5, maybe at worst top 7 offensive line. And let's put it this way. Jared Goff could have thrown for 14 fewer touchdowns last season and still met value at his current ADP. And if he had thrown 14 fewer touchdowns last season, the narrative would not be that he's facing, regression to the mean, like negative regression to the mean. It'd be that he's due for positive regression to the mean and that he's a great value at ADP. So just think about that in your mind. Yes, he got super lucky, but no one's drafting him at where he was last season. He's being drafted as a quarterback 17. Had he actually been the quarterback 17 last year, everyone would look at this and be like, he got so unlucky in the passing touchdown department. That's going to go up. He's a good value at cost, even though it's the same thing. We don't get the points from last season, so why worry about if it's positive or negative regression? Look at him this year. If you can get him in the quarterback 16 to 19 range, I am 100% okay in doing that. Personally, I still prefer the top tier. And again, this comes down to, I've talked positively here about Jared Goff, but he is still in a new tier. I still very much prefer all of the quarterbacks going in the tier above him. But once those guys are gone, I'm completely fine drafting Jared Goff because even if they see a ton of regression down to the mean, he can still pay off his ADP. But my preference would be to not miss tier 4. At 18, we have Trevor Lawrence. Crazy low ADP on ESPN. I don't think that will hold. It makes no sense that it would hold. Obviously, he was awful last season, but he was actually 15th in points per game through week 9 before suffering the shoulder injury. That's before Brian Thomas Jr. really broke out. That's before they drafted Travis Hunter. It's before they added Liam Cohen. I am, or have been, very anti Trevor Lawrence in the past, right? In recent years, I've been like, there's no real reason to draft Trevor Lawrence. He lacks any sort of ceiling. He's never had these big games. We know he's going to be fine, but the situation just isn't really there for him to have ceiling, and that's how you win leagues. You always hear me talk about ceiling. You win leagues by hitting on players who outperform their ADP by a lot, not players that meet or barely outperform their ADP. So there's been no reason recently to draft Trevor Lawrence. This season, I'm happy to report that the ceiling is finally here, or at least the potential for the ceiling is here. He has that baseline mobility that you need to post 21, 23 points per game. Like, if you're just a statue in the pocket and you never take off, never get rushing touchdowns, never get yardage, you don't have the ceiling to do anything, right? You can outperform your ADP, but barely, and it's really just not worth drafting you. He does. He has the mobility. Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, I don't want to say is the best 1-2 duo in the league because we haven't seen Hunter. We haven't seen this year or two from Brian Thomas Jr. Everyone thinks he takes that step forward and is an unbelievable wide receiver. We haven't seen it yet. But at the end of the year, I wouldn't be shocked if we're looking at this wide receiver duo being like, that is a top 3 duo in the NFL. And I personally do believe that Liam Cohen is a true difference maker as a play caller. Like, what he's been able to do in designing plays to get players open has been amazing. And whenever you have that combination, we have it with McVay and Puka. We've had it at times with Shanahan and his players. Like, when you have a player who's fully capable of getting open on their own, and we know Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter are both fully capable with horrible coaching of just getting open on their own. When you pair that with a coach that can scheme you open, you're going to be running wide open downfield. And when you have a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence, who's much better than people think, you can get spike seasons. And that's what we got last year from the Bucs. We had great playmakers, great coaching, and a really good quarterback to where these guys could have gotten open on their own, but Liam Cohen schemed them open, and you just got an incredible season. I think the Jaguars can have a season like the Bucs had last year. I'm really excited about this Jaguars offense. If you somehow missed out on all the top 16 quarterbacks in the top 4 tiers, I think given cost, Trevor Lawrence is easily the best option of the remaining guys. He's someone you should absolutely target heavily. He's someone that you should 100% go after in super flex leagues. But then also, if you're only able to grab one of those top tier 4 quarterbacks, I think dropping into tier 5, drafting Trevor Lawrence for that upside if Liam Cohen really turns things around, like he could be a top 7 or 8 quarterback. And if that occurred and you drafted 2, you'd obviously want to do something there, right? Like what if you, that's the thing. It's like, let's say you draft Drake May and Trevor Lawrence. There's a scenario where they both hit, and now you're like, okay, I have 2 top 10 quarterbacks. I can trade one away. I can stream the best matchup. I can just hold on to them because, maybe one of them gets hurt. Maybe there's bye weeks. Like we can kind of, figure things out there. But you have so many options and you've got really good value on your team to where it's like, it's not a bad thing. If you're like, well, then what do I do if I have 2 good quarterbacks? You have a party because you have 2 good quarterbacks. It's not the end of the world if you end up drafting 2 guys that break out. There will be someone who drafts like a top end quarterback. They bust, they get hurt, and they're sitting there like, oh, this is annoying. And you can trade a quarterback that you drafted this late for potentially like a mid-round wide receiver or running back. You can get huge value differences because quarterback is difficult to trade in season, but it's difficult to trade for. If you're the player holding the value at quarterback, people are oftentimes willing to give up a lot to get that. Again, not drafting a quarterback to trade them, but drafting quarterback knowing they're a very good value. There's a very good chance they will increase in value throughout the season. That's when you want to do it. After Trevor Lawrence, we have Jordan Love. Kind of a tale of 2 seasons for Jordan Love last year, and you can draw a distinct line at his week 8 groin injury. He opens the season, looks fantastic, and then right at the end of that week 1 game, looks like he has a season-ending knee injury. Injury ends up not being as bad as expected. He returns in week 4. In weeks 1, 4, 5, 6, and 7, before the week 8 groin injury, he attempts 35.8 pass attempts per game. He's the quarterback 4 in points per game. Everything from the offense was what we expected to start the year. Then he has the groin injury in week 8. From weeks 9 through 17, he drops way down to 26.5 pass attempts per game. He ranks 24th in points per game. They went way more run heavy after the groin injury. With him healthy this season, with the addition of first round wide receiver Matthew Golden, you would imagine that the offense tilts a lot more pass heavy than they did over the second half of last year, and that Jordan Love would thus gain a lot of his value back. Remains to be seen, though. And so that's why I can't really move him a lot higher than this, because it's like they could be more pass heavy. He could gain this value. Matthew Golden could elevate this offense, but we don't know. It's not like they were bad down the stretch. They still might want to be run heavy. We know that Love, has mobility, but we kind of still don't know like how much, and he's not like hyper mobile. He definitely still needs to have that passing volume. And if he doesn't, he falls off a lot. Like if they actually decide to go out there and still only have him at like 28 pass attempts per game, he's cooked. Like there's just no way you can use that. And so there's a little bit of risk there, to why, again, I think there's upside. I think he should, definitely be in this tier, definitely be in this spot. But there's other quarterbacks that I like a lot more. Final quarterback in tier 5 is CJ Stroud. Obviously a very rough second year last year. Great rookie campaign. It looked like he was going to be an unbelievable prospect. Unfortunately, just a really bad second year. And a big reason why doesn't seem to be solved. Like everyone was saying, he was having a very difficult time behind the worst offensive line in the league. But I'm projecting them to have the worst offensive line in the league again this year. So it's not like he's getting any help in that area. Like you'd have a lot more faith, a lot more hope in CJ Stroud if you were like, yeah, he was bad because of the offensive line, but then they drafted like 5 offensive linemen, they traded for one, they signed one, and all of a sudden they have a top 10 offensive line, and it's not a problem anymore. No, they still probably, like at best, are going to have like that 28th best offensive line. They're going to be bad again this season. It's also tough to be like, okay, well, they brought in Christian Kirk, they brought in Jayden Higgins, nice, but they lost Stephon Diggs, and obviously Tank Dell had the injury that he's probably going to be out all of the season. So it's tough to not call that a downgrade to what they had. So it's like, if you downgrade the playmakers, you have the same offensive line. He doesn't run the ball that much, so he has to do all of his damage through the air. I think he'll be better than he was last year, but the path to him being a true difference maker, definitely a league winner, there's like no chance. But even a true difference maker, someone you're relying on every week, it's pretty thin. So yeah, my clear favorite from this tier is Trevor Lawrence. He just is easily the best value by ADP, easily has the best chance to be something you're actually relying on this season. Tier 6. Tier 6 is a range where like I'd still be fine drafting these guys in Superflex, ideally as like your third quarterback in Superflex, but I don't like the path to really any of these guys being like starters in one quarterback leagues. I think it's a pretty thin idea thinking that week in and week out, you'll be starting these guys regardless of matchup. I think these are streaming options. I think they are, third quarterbacks in Superflex where it's like if you have a bye week, if you have an injury, if you have a terrible matchup, you can kind of slot these guys in and get decent production. But these are not guys I anticipate us relying on as in a one quarterback league, unless it's like a 16-team league where you're like fine with just okay production. Start off, we have Bryce Young. Awful, obviously, as a rookie. Awful to open last season. Really turned things up though, kind of the second half of the year after he was benched. And we get, of course, like the injury to Andy Dalton, kind of bring back Bryce Young. And he played a lot better. Like, honestly, he came out there and you're like, wait a minute. Like, what happened when he was on the bench? Wasn't like an elite quarterback or anything, but he had at least one passing touchdown in every game, after he returned. Did a much better job limiting turnovers. He was much more accurate. He showed really good mobility. He ran for 22 yards per game. He had 5 touchdowns in 10 weeks. Like, that's basically what you're hoping for when you draft him this season, is that he plays like he did from week 8 on last year, where he was 15th in points per game. That would very much outperform his ADP. If he plays like that, he still has that mobility. He got a little lucky with rushing touchdowns. Like, that's probably not going to continue. But if he plays like he did, and you add in Ted McMillan, and maybe he just progresses in another year in the NFL, but Ted also giving him that, alpha wide receiver one to throw to, I can see it in theory. But again, if I was in like a 12-team league and I ended up as Bryce Young as my one, I'd be like, what happened? Like, why do I have like 7 really solid wide receivers? I'm not going to start the 7th. I should have just taken a quarterback a little earlier. That's what will go through your mind. So as a second quarterback, you want to draft Drake Maye and you want to draft Bryce Young. Go for it. Purdy and Young, go for it. Do not leave a draft with Bryce Young as your only quarterback. Same thing with Penix, honestly. Penix at 22. case for Penix is honestly the environment, right? You've got really good playmakers around him. You've got great coaching staff. You've got an above average offensive line. You play a bunch of games in a dome. You've got a defense that can't stop anyone. So if the Falcons are going to get into a bunch of shootouts in domes and have the firepower to keep up on offense, yeah, and Penix is still an unknown. Like, there's a chance that Penix is just a really, really good quarterback. I think he could surprise people in fantasy. The one drawback is mobility. Like, he's super athletic, right? And if he wanted to scramble a bunch, he could actually do a lot. He just doesn't like to scramble. He doesn't like to run it. So he's going to have rushing yards. He's going to have games where he breaks off like 2 or 3 like decently long runs, maybe runs for a touchdown, and you'll be like, nice, right? Like that's going to happen sometimes, but it's going to be hard to predict because, again, he doesn't like to run. And so that benefits us a lot with the skill players. You love hearing that. If you've got Drake London, you've got Bijan, Pitts, Mooney, you've got these guys that don't want Penix obviously scrambling and taking all the yards for himself. But in terms of Penix fantasy value, obviously it hurts a little bit because like he is really athletic. And so if he took off a lot, he could have that like Drake May level upside of like getting so much done on the ground that he doesn't need to do as much through the air, but he's probably not going to do that. And so we'll see. Honestly, it'll come down to camp reports. How much is he running? How good does the offense look? How bad does the defense look? Penix is a quarterback that I could definitely see breaking out. I would definitely like taking a shot on again, especially in Superflex leagues. I'm just hoping the reports are positive, but we kind of need to see some of those reports before I'm willing to draft him a ton. At 23, we have Matthew Stafford. Not ideal, he's 37, but it's not the end of the world. We've seen quarterbacks this age produce before, and especially in recent years. We haven't seen any sort of major decline from Stafford, so there's no indication that it's going to happen this season. I will say, remember Matt Ryan, remember Kirk Cousins last year. Like, when the drop-off happens, it's very steep, and so you could be getting into week 4, 5, 6, and you're like, what the heck happened to Matthew Stafford? Like, that can happen. I would say there's probably only like a 25% chance that does occur. I think there's like a 75% chance we look at Stafford and we're like, maybe you're not peak Stafford, but you're good enough to hit an open Puka and open Adams and to have a good season. So some risk of age there, but the bigger risk is honestly the running, and that like he is not going to run the ball at all. I mean, he could have like 30 total rushing yards on the season, many weeks where he has negative rushing yards because of, quarterback kneel downs. So it makes it very difficult for him to compete with the top end. Like if I'm going up against Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Jayden Daniels, and I have Stafford, I need him to have 300 yards, 3 touchdowns to have a chance at competing with these guys. Maybe 300 yards, 2 touchdowns can get it done, but you need a very, very good game. You need the passing production. And there's a lot of quarterbacks this season that are very good. And so he's going to have a great year. He's going to have Adams step it up. He's going to have Adams not, drop off this season. When these quarterbacks add absolutely nothing on the ground, because they have to have solid performances through the air, they make really good streaming options. So when they're playing a bad defense, when they're playing in the dome, when they're playing against another team that's going to push them, great. When they're playing a tough defense, when they're playing, outdoors, you start to be like, okay, I can't really stream them. So strictly streaming, strictly Superflex leagues for me for Stafford. But again, I see the upside. Puka and Adams, great duo, great coaching there. If they decide to feature Adams in the red zone, Stafford could have a lucky season with touchdowns, a spiked season with touchdowns, and that would be great, again, for streaming. Someone you basically can't play, in my opinion, though, is Tua. He goes after him, my quarterback, 24. I mean, look at 2023, honestly. He led the NFL in passing yards. He was 6th in passing touchdowns. He was 21st in fantasy points per game because he doesn't run it. And that's another reason why you look at Stafford and you're like, I see it. But if the man doesn't throw for 4,500 yards and 30 touchdowns, if he just doesn't do that good, it's not going to be great in fantasy. And then Tua, you add in concussion risk, which, again, you don't care about that much in this range, but you do a little bit because it's that's mid-game. That's something that on drive 2, if he scrambles for 3 yards and doesn't go down quick enough or he gets sacked, he can just be done. And when he's done for 4 games, but also it's that mid-game potential for him is so much higher than everyone else that I would need to have some sort of upside, right? Think about Anthony Richardson. We'll get to him in a little bit. With Anthony Richardson, it's like, yeah, he could leave a game like that, but he could also run for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, he has the upside to score a ton of fantasy points. Unless Tua throws for like 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, he doesn't have the upside to make up for this risk, to make up for these games where they just run for their touchdowns. So it's not worth it unless you drafted like Hill and Waddle or one of those two on Underdog. You want to pair them with Tua. Unless that is the case, do not draft Tua in a redraft league, even in a superflex league. Final player in tier 6 is Geno Smith. He does have some rushing upside, at least compared to some of the guys we talked about recently. He'll run for like 15 yards per game, maybe runs in a score or two. Like, he'll at least take off sometimes to where you're like, thank you for like the 3 points this week. Thank you for randomly getting me 6 or 7 with the touchdown. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be something that you're truly relying on that much. Raiders are going to play faster this year. Going to play a lot faster than a lot of people are expecting, but they'll be very run heavy. So they're going to play fast, but run the ball a lot. Good skill players, probably better cast of skill players than people realize. The issue is they're in a brutal division. Again, they're going to be pretty run heavy. They faced the Broncos, the Chiefs, the Chargers twice. They faced the Patriots, Bears, and Eagles, also have strong defenses. Like, they face a lot of really good defenses. I like Geno a lot as a player, but as is the theme with tier 6, I highly doubt anyone in this tier is someone you're consistently relying on. Tier 6 is the streamer tier. It is the tier where they're playing a bad defense. They're playing indoors. They're playing, in a game where we think they're going to have to throw the ball a ton. Go for it as a streaming option. As for tier 7, if tier 6 is the streaming tier, tier 7 is the cross your fingers and hope tier. You've got Aaron Rodgers, Cam Ward, Anthony Richardson, Sam Darnold, Tyler Shuck, Daniel Jones, and Jackson Dart. This group is fine as your last quarterback. Your quarterback 3 on Underdog. Maybe your third quarterback in a super flex league if everyone else is really aggressive at quarterback. Again, I would very much prefer your third quarterback comes from tier 6 in really any format. I just have no faith that you can rely on this tier for weekly production. The ceiling for most of these guys is non-existent. The one caveat for ceiling is, of course, the Colts quarterback. Whoever is the starting quarterback on the Colts in a given week is going to project well, is going to be a good streaming option, but is going to have that risk of in-week benching. And that is not something you want in fantasy, especially in a redraft league where you can only start the one. It doesn't hurt you as much on a site like Underdog, especially if you're a third quarterback, because you're like, okay, it didn't hit this week, but maybe it will in the future. But as things stand right now, it's impossible to know, right? How many games is Daniel Jones versus Anthony Richardson going to play? And so you just can't rely on drafting them. If I was doing a draft right now in Redraft League, there's no way I would draft either one. Again, in any given week, if you told me who the starter is and you told me they're going to play the whole game, they are going to rank every week in that quarterback 10 to 20 range. And who knows, if one gets going, maybe they're a top 10 quarterback on a weekly basis. So they're a streaming option. But if you were drafting a redraft league today, you have no idea who's going to start the season, who's going to play more games between AR and Daniel Jones. So realistically, you wouldn't draft either one of them. You would watch the battle in camp. And if it becomes clear that one of them is winning the job and you want to stream them early on, go for it. But right now, you can't be drafting them. Two others that people might want are Cam Ward and Sam Darnold. I think both have streaming potential, but as I've said a lot, there are a lot of really good quarterbacks this season. I'm just not confident enough in the fantasy value of either one of them, so I'm not drafting them. Maybe Sam thrives in Kubiak's system. Maybe Cam Ward breaks out as a player, but there's close to a 0% chance that either one of them buries you for fading them. We were all over Sam Darnold last year because of the system, because of the playmakers. And maybe you can argue that Kubiak has a good system, but look at the playmaker difference between, Cooper Kupp and JSN as the top 2 playmakers on Seattle versus Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones. Like, it's just such a better system. They play in a dome. They don't play in Seattle. Like, it's a huge downgrade. I know I like Kubiak, but I like Kubiak more from a Ken Walker perspective. So not in on Sam Darnold this season. And again, Cam Ward, the playmakers around him aren't that great. We're not in love with the coaching like we are in some other spots. And he's still a rookie. It's pretty unlikely that Cam Ward goes out there and is like a quarterback you're relying on each week. Stream them if you really need to, but there's no need to be drafting them. All right, for those of you who are still here, please leave a like. It is greatly appreciated. If you want to see my full rankings across all formats and how these quarterbacks, fit in with the skill players as well, where you should be ranking them or taking them exactly, you can see it on my website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. I'll see you all on Friday to go over the tight end rankings. But that'll do it for this one. Please subscribe to the channel if you are new here, and I'll catch you all on the next one.